reiterate and emphasize something that I shared last week, and I want to make sure that we're clear on this. Again, I am not a Greek scholar. I'm relying on what other people say. Specifically in this situation, I'm relying upon William Barclay and his book, New Testament Words. He is a Greek scholar, at least was, he's passed away. But he was a Greek scholar, and I trust him, and I trust his knowledge of Greek. And he talks about these four different ways of understanding love through the Greek language. There are others out there who say, no, you know what, it's not that clear cut. There are some out there who will say that philia and agape are just simply two different Greek words that mean the same thing. And one person who, just to be fair and balanced and give equal time, one person who has written a book to this end is a gentleman by the name of D.A. Carson. You may have heard of him. And he's written a book entitled Exegetical Fallacies. Yep. And in his book, he's saying, look, we're making way too much about this distinction between philia and agape. And he's saying, you know, it wasn't that way. Now, I'm going to let the Greek scholars battle this out. I'm not going to. My purpose in this study is not to dive into that debate. That's not my purpose. But what I have found in my own life, and now I'm getting to the age where I can look back and say, okay, I've learned something in my life. Okay? And one of the things that I have learned is that we use words to describe reality. And in my own life experiences, I know that there is a reality, that there is a difference between the sexual passion I may feel for my wife and the charitable Christian love that I might feel for a homeless guy in Louisiana. There is a reality difference going on there. These four words are very helpful to me because they help me understand and describe this reality that I feel in my life. I know that there's a difference, again, between sexual love and friendship love and family love and agape love. There's a difference. I see it in my life and I experience that. English doesn't help us because we have one word to describe these four very different things that we all experience. Greek helps us. There are four different words. Now, this does not mean, as I said last week, that every time a Greek writer uses one of these words, they mean what William Barclay says they mean, or what D.A. Carson says they mean. But I think that there is a pattern. In fact, one of the patterns that we'll see as we go along, and Barclay makes a big deal about this in his book, if you look at pre-Christian secular Greek, the classical Greek writings, the most common word used for love in those writings is this filial love. Okay, agape is used very rarely in pre-Christian Greek. Okay, it's there, but very rarely. And its meaning is not fully developed. And we talked last week about how words change meaning. So that now invite is a noun. Okay. And so words change. And this word agape, we can see the development of it in first century Christianity. When the Christians came along, you know, they didn't just follow the secular Greeks and say, okay, God philia loves you, although they do say that, but they didn't just latch on that word. They needed a new word. They needed a new word to describe something that was new with Jesus. Now I go back to this, Jesus saying, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you. I'm saying, that command's been around since Leviticus. What's new about it? And the thought occurred to me this morning as I was in the bathroom where I do all my best thinking. You know, maybe the newness here is that Jesus is latching on to a word that wasn't that used that much. He's latching on to this agape. He's latching on to this love that is a choice of the will rather than a warm, fuzzy feeling of the heart. Prior to first century Christianity, the Greek filial love was the warm, fuzzy feeling of the heart. And now Jesus is calling us to something new. So that by the time we get to the New Testament, as Barclay puts it, agape is by far and away the most common used word in the New Testament for love. Over 250 times between the noun and the verb. So there's a shift here. And it's almost as if the Christians appropriated this word agape and it's almost made it a uniquely Christian term. And so that's what I'm going here with. I want to look at these words not so much to get into a debate of Greek exegesis. I am not qualified to go down that road. But I want to look at these 4 words to help us look in our own lives and say, okay, yeah, I understand those warm, fuzzy feelings when my wife buys me a fun little present. She knows I love Good and Plenty candy. And so when she comes home from Walmart, there'll be a box of Good and Plenty. And that gives me those warm, fuzzy philia feelings, just to know that she thought of me when she's at Walmart. But there are other times when the emotions are dead and they're just dry, and not because anything's wrong, they're just, emotions go up and down. But I still have that agape love. And so we know the reality, so I'm looking at the words to help us appreciate the reality. So that's where I'm going with all this. All right, as we saw last week, there are just the 2 words, eros and storge. We looked at those last week. And the points here with these 2 words, eros, it's not found in the New Testament at all. There are 19 references in the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Hebrew Old Testament. Storge, there's only one allusion to it in Romans 12:9. Be kindly affection to one another with brotherly love. And that's it. So let's move on. And today we're going to look at philia and agape. And I'm sort of going to do them sort of hand in hand, and then focus on each one. I may get into the weeds a little bit more than you want to, but it's often said that the teacher gets the biggest blessing. Mm-hmm. And as I'm studying this, I'm having a real hard time trying to figure out what I don't want to share, because everything I'm finding is really cool. And so I'm going to get into a lot of detail. The other thing that I have learned is that the teacher also gets the most opportunities to practice what he's preaching. I don't know what it is about Sunday school lessons. Years and years ago, about 15 years ago, we were up in Ohio, and the pastor of the church asked me if Carol and I would lead a Sunday school class on the marriage book, Love and Respect. Emerson Eggerich's excellent book. And so I said, sure, I will do it. And he said, let me warn you. In the past, we've known at least 3 couples who have led studies on this book who since got divorced. Oh. And I thought, whoa. And I thought, this is before I read the book. I read the book. It is an excellent, excellent, excellent book. If you're married, I would highly recommend it. Or if you're thinking about getting married, I would highly recommend it. But I say all this to say, obviously, Carol and I didn't get divorced. But for whatever reason, the week before we were going to start the first lesson, Carol and I had the strongest disagreement, I'm using disagreement, in our marriage. I don't remember what it was about, but I'm sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, how do I go in and teach love and respect now? Well, as I'm up here studying and preparing for this lesson, the past week or 2, God has given me many opportunities to learn how far I have to go in obeying Jesus' new command. And I'll just leave it at that. Life is out there. I am not sharing this stuff because I got it all together. I'm sharing this stuff because I'm muddling along with everybody else, trying to learn what Jesus has for us in this love that he's commanded us to have for one another, and to learn how to live as Jesus told me to live. Somebody once said years ago in a Bible study, they said, you should never teach a Sunday school lesson or a topic unless you got victory over that. And I thought to myself, well, then none of the topics would ever get taught about. Yeah, so.
Who's going to be the teacher?
Yeah, who's going to be the teacher? So I'm not standing up here as a guy who's got it all together. I'm standing up here as a guy who's failing and being forgiven and learning as I go. So philia, this is from Strong's Dictionary, and many of these definitions, they compare philia and agape in the same definition. So let's look at this. To be a friend to, fond of, and then brackets, an individual or an object. We'll come back to that object later on. That is to have affection for, denoting personal attachment as a matter of sentiment or feeling. While agape is wider, embracing especially the judgment and the deliberate assent of the will as a matter of principle, duty, and propriety. The two thus stand related, the former being chiefly of the heart and the latter of the head. So this follows along where Barclay is going in his book, there are enough people out there who agree with this, so I'm going to stick with it. Philia, the sentimental feeling. I was talking with a lady after church last Sunday, and she used the term warm and fuzzy. I mean, for her, it's the warm and fuzzy love. It's the love that feels good. It's the love where you feel it emotionally. Agape is almost stoic. That's too strong of a word, but it's almost unemotional, but it's not completely. In fact, I have to say, I don't like that word duty. Because that almost makes it sound like I'm going to grit my teeth and love you with agape love, even though I don't want to, even if it kills me. Yeah, I don't like that word, and I don't think that captures the flavor of it. To me, what agape says, what agape does, at least in my heart, and when I actually think about it in the moment, it actually seems to work. Agape is looking at another person through God's eyes. Seeing the person as God sees them, the value that he places upon them. And to me, that's bigger than duty. Duty is just simply doing what I got to do because somebody commanded me to do it. But agape, it's more than that. It's taking God's heart and trying to put it in ourselves. I love that line at the end of Les Miserables, the musical. To love another person is to see the face of God. Man, I just love that. You know, I looked for it. It's not in the book. They just picked it up for the musical. But it's a great. To love another person is to see the face of God. And to love another person through the eyes of God, it's bigger than duty. It's bigger than duty. So, let's go on. I've got the philia. Again, this is how I distinguish the two. Philia is the emotion we feel when another person or a thing appeals to us for a wide variety of reasons. And agape is the choice we make to do the best we can for another person, whether that person is a lover, a friend, or a foe. So, emotions, and the two are related. Think of a circle or two people. I got a circle, okay, so I've got a circle going on like this. So person A expresses acts of agape love toward person B. Person B receives those acts and it stirs their emotions of filial love. So when you receive an act of agape, it stirs your emotional filial love, which then motivates you to give agape love back, which is then received through the emotions of filial love, which motivates agape love and receive. And so you got this circle going on. So it's not like there's a bright line between the two forms of love and never the twain shall meet. No, they feed each other. They feed each other. And the more feelings of philia that we can have for a person, the easier it is to show them agape love. And that's what relationships are about. It's what happens in marriages all the time. The more we express our agape love, the more it is received as filial love, if that makes sense. Because philia is an emotion. And emotions are simply our body's reactions to external stimuli. Whether it's feelings of love, feelings of anger, feelings of guilt, feelings of whatever. Things are coming into us, and we got all those chemicals in our brain that start going, and that causes the feelings that we feel. And it's emotional and it's responsive. Okay, another source I looked at, Olive Tree. They have Bible software. They also have a blog, and I found this on their blog website. This word filio is one of feeling. Again, the same thought, same heart. A heart of love, where agape is a matter of benevolence, duty, again, that duty word I don't like, and commitment. This is the key. We are commanded to have agape love, but not filial love, because feelings cannot be commanded. I mean, think about that. I mean, you go up to your kids, like your brother and sister. Well, good luck with that. Okay? You can command actions, but you really, I don't know how you can command a feeling. And with one possible exception, and we'll get to it later on, I don't know of any place in the scriptures where philia is actually directly commanded. And we'll get to the exception. Margaret, what were you going to say?
I think that it applies to other areas too besides love. I know that one of the things that struck me the most about the scriptures, because that's all I was hungry for, was God's word. I didn't want TV, I didn't want books, I didn't want anything. But when I would read, it was how many things were directed to my will.
Yeah.
Let the peace of God rule in your heart. In other words, I have a choice.
Yes.
And, I could go down a path that's totally blocked it and become bitter, or I could let it in.
Yes.
I had to choose it. And I think that is the whole thing. That's not duty. That's choice. Surrender.
Surrender. It's a choice.
Yes.
It's a choice. It's not a grit your teeth, I got to do this because I'm commanded to. It is, hey, I see that this is a good thing. And don't let me be misunderstood. You can't necessarily command feelings, but we can do things that affect the way we feel. That's what psychology is all about. Learning how to live your life in a way that positively affects your emotions.
Cart before the horse.
Cart before the horse. I mean, there's that Minirth Meyer book, Happiness is a Choice. And so in many respects, it is. It's not that I can wake up and say, okay, I'm going to choose to be happy today. Mm-hmm. But I can choose to do and think things that will cause the brain chemistry in my brain to go do, to make me feel happy.
Yes. And this is the day the Lord has made. I will.
Yes.
Rejoice and be glad.
Yes.
And that's not necessarily that you're feeling that, yay, 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 wow, this is a wonderful day, and bluebirds are in the sky and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. We choose to make decisions. I can choose to think about all of my wife's great qualities. Or I can choose to think about qualities about my wife that may not be my favorite. Okay?
Artfully said.
I was thinking as I was saying it. How am I going to say this?
Recording this.
I'm recording this. I'm recording this. I love you, Carol.
It's a choice.
And it's a feeling.
Artfully said.
And so, what I choose to think about is going to direct how I feel. Okay?
So true.
It is so true. So yes, you can't necessarily command a feeling, but you can command actions that will affect the feelings. And so that's where I think this is going. Okay, so if God has commanded us to have agape for our neighbors, for our wives, for one another, and for our enemies, then this begs the question that I would have asked when I was about 8 years old. Then what's the difference between loving your wife and loving your enemy? He's commanded it, the same love. He's commanded agape love for your neighbor, agape love for one another, agape love for your wife, and agape love for your enemy. So what's the difference? And this is where I think these 4 words come to help us out. And I've got this little, there we go. Press the right button. Got this little chart, and this is where it helps me out. If you look at the different relationships that you have, if you're a married couple, ideally you're going to have all 4 of these levels of love in your marriage. Okay, you're going to have the passion of Eros. You're going to have the family bond of Storge. You're going to have the friendly, warm, fuzzy feelings of Philia, and you're going to have agape. And you're going to have all 4 of those. And sometimes, you know, depending on the circumstances of your life, the agape is what's going to sustain you until you can get the Philia back and the feelings of Storge and Eros. When you go to other family members, you're not going to have the Eros, but you will still have the Storge and the Philia and the agape. When you look at your near and dear friends, you're going to feel those warm, fuzzy feelings of Philia and agape, but by definition, you're not necessarily a family member, so Storge isn't necessarily going to apply in those circumstances. And, you know, unless you want to go down the path of adultery, you're not going to have Eros with just friends. And then with everybody else, including our enemies, it's going to be the agape. So yeah, the agape is what is commanded in all of these situations. But reality tells me that that's not the only love we feel or experience in different types of relationships. And in those other relationships, we'll have the other levels of love, the Eros. And that's why I love these 4 Greek words, because they do reflect what seems to me to be a reality of life. Okay, so let's look at Philia a little bit more detail. One of the 4 Greek words for love, this one signifies friendship, fondness, affection, delight, and personal attachment. This word is one of feeling, a heart of love. Philia is also the word for kiss. So that gives you a sense of this warm, fuzzy, emotional. I mean, philia is the word that's used for kiss. And Barclay says the same thing in his book, New Testament Words. There's a lovely warmth about these words. When he talks about these words, he's talking about the noun and the verb. They mean to look on someone with affectionate regard. They can also be used for the love of a friendship and for the love of husband and wife. The line, the verb, is best translated to cherish. That's a neat word. I like that. It includes physical love, but it includes much else besides. It can sometimes even mean to kiss. So let's look in the Bible where it actually is used that way. Song of Solomon, this is in the Septuagint. That's that LXX, that stands for the 70 translators. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. Philema, the phileo word. In Romans 16, we greet one another with a holy kiss. I always wonder, what is a holy kiss? Okay?
One that's not sensual?
That's where I was going.
I was going to say the same thing.
Well, because I'm researching this stuff, I actually looked it up, and I saw what other people said, and they actually compared the Romans 16 holy kiss with what Judas did in Matthew 26.
Oh, wow.
Now he who betrayed him with them a sign saying, whoever I kiss, he is the one, seize him. I use these 3 different verses to show that even with a single word, you can have 3 different contexts and meaning. In Song of Solomon, you have the sensual, emotional, loving, erotic kiss. With Romans, greet one another with a holy kiss. It certainly doesn't have the same connotation as we see with the bride and groom in Song of Solomon. But then in Matthew, we have a kiss of betrayal. Same word, different context, different meaning. But they're all based on the same root as philia. And so yeah, the holy kiss, at least with the commentators I was looking at, said that they were comparing it with Judas's kiss of betrayal. But I wonder if part of that is because religious commentators just simply don't like talking about sex. So, okay. Other places where philia is used, Matthew 10:37. He who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he who loves son or daughter more than me isn't worthy of me. This is philia used in this passage. And so here he's talking about, and this is interesting, it's certainly not a command, but it certainly makes me stop and pause and think, what are my emotional feelings for Jesus? Okay? And not to be sexist, but I'm a guy, okay? And it's easy for me to not feel things emotionally as much as even my wife will feel, okay? There are differences between men and women, hormonal differences. You all have heard of the hormone oxytocin. This is the hormone that makes this a warm, fuzzy, cuddly. It's called the cuddle hormone. It's a hormone that flows when you feel warm and fuzzy. Well, I have read, and I'm getting this from other people, I've read that you ladies have about 10 times more oxytocin in your body than your husbands do, or men do. And so that, to me, that explains a lot. And you got that going on. I talked last week about the men are waffles, women are spaghetti, and I've read, again, a reason for this. You're probably wondering, what's he reading all the time? But I just read a lot of different topics. I have read, again, I don't know how true it is, but what I've read is that when the baby is in the womb, if it's a boy, at some point in time in the development process, it gets a bath, the brain gets a bath of testosterone, which physically separates it. So you get a strong separation in a guy between right brain, left brain. You ladies don't get that. And so your brain stays more connected. And so things are bouncing back and forth, right, left, right, left. And with us guys, there's a clear line down the middle, and the right brain, the left brain, never the twain shall meet. And so we compartmentalize and stuff. We had a pastor up in Ohio, said that when he was in college, the professor gave them a test, a question. And he didn't say what the question was, and I wish he would have. But he said that it was a question that the women taking the test would get the answer right more than the men, and they would get it faster than the men. Simply because the guy's brains, we got that split down the middle of our brain that you ladies don't have. And he said it was true. So I don't know. There are all kinds of differences out there, but like I say, this verse in Matthew, it causes me to just pause and think, what am I dwelling on? What am I thinking about to affect my emotional feelings toward Jesus? And it's something to pause and think about. My love for Jesus isn't just a duty. It isn't just a choice. But the things that I can choose to think about, pray about, spend time with Jesus about, read about Jesus, so that I can positively affect my emotional heart toward Jesus. So there's that. We have the story in John 11 of Lazarus, and they said, where have you laid him? Jesus said, where have you laid him? They told him, come, Lord, come and see. Jesus wept. The Jews therefore said, see how much affection he had for him. This is from the World English Bible. It's the web Bible that I use for my slides primarily because it's in the public domain, and I don't have to worry about YouTube getting all over me for copyright violations. But I really like this translation. They started off with the 1901 American Standard Version and then updated a little bit. And so the translator here is obviously trying to capture the emotional side of this filial love. And he does it again in John 5:20. This is neat, because this is where philia is applied to God. We often read that agape is the love of God. Well, philia is too. And this is where I think some of D.A. Carson's feeling and thoughts are. Now, you can't separate these with bright lines the way you might want to. The Father has affection for the Son and shows him all things that he himself does. He will show him greater works than these, that you may marvel. So even the love between the Father and the Son isn't purely agape love. It is an affectionate, it's a warmth. There's a warmth, affectionate feeling between the Father and the Son. This is the verse I was alluding to earlier when I say this may be the exception to the idea that philia is not commanded. Paul is talking to Titus here. He's telling him to have the older ladies teaching the younger ladies. And he puts it this way, that they may teach the young women to be sober, to love their husbands, to love their children. And here he's using the emotional forms. Love husbands is philandros, and philotechnos is love children. Technos would be children, andros would be husbands. So it's not necessarily a command as such, and it's not like Jesus saying, a new command I give to you, but he is encouraging, exhorting the older women to teach the younger women to have this emotional filial love for their husbands and for their children. It's just a neat passage. But then we get into some controversy. In a single book of John 20, therefore she ran and came to Simon Peter and to the other disciple whom Jesus loved, and said to them, they have taken away the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have laid them. There it's philia. That very next chapter. That disciple, therefore, whom Jesus loved, said to Peter, it is the Lord. There the word for love is agape. So what's going on here? You've got one book referring to the same person, the disciple whom Jesus loved, and in one verse he uses the word philia, and the next verse he uses the word agape.
I think this gives credence to the point that Carson and other scholars have made, is that we got to be careful about drawing strong boxes around these words and saying that they don't cross over one another at all. I think it bears this out, and I think we got to remember too is Koine Greek. Here in the New Testament we're reading. This is Poor Man's Greek, if you will. It's simplified Greek. It's very much simpler than the Greek that Plato had been writing with, and it's way simpler than the Greek that the church fathers in the 300s and 400s have been using. And it's very much simplified so that really anybody can get it. And I think this bears out that these words, we want to be careful about pulling them apart too strongly. There is a connection.
Yeah, I think that's true. The one explanation is that. I mean, Carson latches on this in his book, and so we need to be careful. There are other explanations. One explanation that I just came across by accident. My son gave me a new Bible. It is what's it called? The Oxford English Study Bible. And so it's, I just love seeing all kinds of different perspectives, and this would be probably a more liberal perspective. But they make the comment in their notes about the Gospel of John that there is some question out there that maybe there was a different author for John chapter 21 than the rest of the book. Because if you look at the end of John 20, it almost reads like it's the end of the book. And then you get another whole chapter. I'm not going to go there because if you look at the phrase, the disciple whom Jesus loved, these aren't the only two places it appears in John. It's in John 13 and other chapters. And so I don't think that would explain this. John 22 is the only verse in John that uses the word philia. All of the other references to the disciple whom Jesus loved use the word agape. To me, I sort of look at this the way I look at John 5, where it talks about the Father having filial love for the Son. I won't go as far as Carson as to say that they're synonyms, but I will say that there's an overlap there, and they're not mutually exclusive. You can't have the bright line between the two and say never the twain shall meet. It is, they complement each other, and you can and you should have both in your dearest relationships. And so to me, what the writer's saying here is that Jesus does love John with an emotional, warm, fuzzy, filial love. And he does love John with a agape love in which I seek the best for you, no matter what. And so, I mean, to me, the two words are not mutually exclusive, and what the writer here is telling me is Jesus has both of these things going on at the same time. So, now I talked about philia, having philia towards things. The Strong's Dictionary said to be a friend too fond of, or an individual, or an object. When I would say, I love Good and Plenty, I love chocolate chip cookies, I love hiking in the woods, I love my Toyota Camry. Whatever it is, that love that I'm using there, I'm talking about a warm emotional feeling. These things bring me joy. They bring me pleasure. And this is found in Genesis 27. Jacob is telling Esau, no. Isaac is telling Jacob and Esau to bring him food. And telling one of the sons there, bring me savory food such as I love. Well, the Greek translators of the Septuagint picked up on that, and they used the word philia there. Okay? So when we talk about, man, I really love my wife's cooking. Okay, that's a filial love. Okay, it's not making a commitment to seek out the best for my wife's cooking. My wife's cooking brings me pleasure, and I love it. And so that's what we're talking about there. We see the same thing in Matthew 6 when we see agape being used to deal with activities in life. Okay, he's talking about praying here. When you pray, you shall not be as the hypocrites, for they love, filial love, to stand and pray in the synagogues and in the corners of the streets, that they may be seen by men. There was something about praying in the synagogues and the streets to be seen that brought a sense of well-being to the hypocrites. And so they loved to do it. So again, this is filial love that's going on here. So another chart here to compare the two. Philia is emotional. I've got agape as being volitional, it's of the will. Philia is responsive. Okay? The more you do things for me that please me, the more I'm going to respond with filial love. But agape is, I'm using the word immovable here. George MacDonald used the word inexorable. He says only love is inexorable. You cannot move agape love. It's not responsive. I don't love you because. See, with filial love, I can say I love you because and fill in the blank. I love you because I love your sense of humor. I love you because you're kind and gentle. I love you because you're pretty. I love you because, you can fill in the blank. There's a whole bunch of becauses for filial love. There's no because for agape, other than I love you because you are. God loves you because you exist. And so, I don't know what word, I struggled all week to come up with the right word is there. And I came up with immovable, that may not be the right word, but it's I love you simply because I love you. There's no because. I want the very best for you because I want the very best for you. Because philia is responsive and emotional, if we're honest, we have to also recognize that to some extent it's conditional. I have the warm, fuzzy feelings of love for you as long as you do the things that produce warm, fuzzy feelings in my life. And this is where we go wrong in our marriages. We stop with the conditional filial love. I no longer love him or her because he no longer gives me the pleasure. This is where the agape is supposed to come in and fill in the gap, and we don't do that. We don't make those choices, and our marriages fail. Agape is unconditional. You can be my worst enemy, and I will have agape for you. I'm supposed to have agape for you. And because of this, philia fluctuates. It goes up, and it goes down, it goes up, and it goes down. I mean, you get married, and you're on this emotional high, and weeks, months, years into the marriage, your emotions start to fluctuate, and you wonder, oh no, what's wrong? What's happened? I've lost my love. Well, no, nobody can sustain that high forever. Okay? So philia is going to fluctuate. Agape is constant. Okay. I'm going to stop there. I've got a couple more slides, but I'm going to save these for next week. We'll get into the depth of agape, and Barclay's got a lot to say about this. And again, if I'm getting too detailed, just bear with me. It's a real blessing to me, at least, and I hope it'll be a blessing to you to see all the things that he has to say. It's really, really neat. And so we'll come back next week and talk about that. So let me close this in prayer, and then we'll move in.